Welcome to a video from thedigital-lifestyle.com. In this video, it's another retro computer video, and this time I'm looking at the progress from Windows Vista to Windows 7. The last video I did was looking back at Windows Vista and seeing if it really was as bad as the reputation it got. And in this video, I'm looking if Windows 7 was a significant update to Windows Vista, as it was made out at the time, and Windows 7 proved to be one of the most popular versions of Windows for some time. And so I'm going to look at some of the changes, some of the headline features from Microsoft. I looked back at some of their press releases of what they called out with the main features, so we're going to look at that as well. And I'm going to look at see if it really was such a big step from Vista to 7. So this Windows Vista session is the one I used for the last video, exactly where I was up to with gadgets and everything else, and here is my Windows 7. These aren't activated. I don't even know they will activate anymore. So we've got a couple of things won't work, but we should be able to get away with most of them. So straight away you can see here the taskbar at the bottom changed just a little bit. Windows Vista had this little bit where it peaked above, and now you've got the Windows logo there. But there's a lot more to the taskbar than just that. So, but I'm going to come back to that. Before I go into that, I want to look at resources. So what I'm going to do is fire up this machine. I'll look at the performance. So looking on here now, you can see that I've got if I go to my Vista machine, there you see the memory that I'm using just rebooted, and just open this up, 470 meg, and I go back to my Windows 7 machine. You see I'm using 300 meg. I'm not sure whether this is a real fair comparison, because Windows kind of allocates its memory based on what's free, and then it's got its own memory management. But it does appear when you look at Task Manager that Windows 7 is using the memory more efficiently than Windows 8, and also the CPU as well is the Windows 7 virtual machine feels more responsive. But that might just be because I'm used to Windows 7. But that might just be one of those things where you just expect, you're expecting that to have that. But anyway, so there we go. So I've got the two machines running, and out of the box, it seems that Windows 7 is lighter on resources than Windows Vista. Because the other big problem with Windows Vista was the drivers not being ready for things like printers and scanners and all that kind of thing. And between the time of Vista being released and Windows 7 being released, the manufacturers caught up on the driver issues. So drivers weren't really as much as an issue when we got to Windows 7, because the manufacturers had caught up. So that was probably one reason why Windows 7 would appear better than Vista, is because the drivers have been caught up by the various manufacturers. So in terms of performance, I would say that Windows Vista feels slower than Windows 7. So let's have a look at the UI changes, and we'll have a look at some of the application things. Here you see the old Vista start menu, and if I go over to Windows 7 and look at the start menu, you can see not a huge amount of changes. Obviously, one thing that's gone is the gadgets on the sidebar. They've disappeared, not in Windows 7. So they were there in Windows Vista, and they're not there in 7. So they've got rid of those. The start menu doesn't look hugely different, just a little bit cleaned up from Vista. Taskbar obviously looks different as well as the actual Windows button itself. You have got the desktop peak button, which is still there in Windows 10. I use that quite often. It's a nice way of minimizing everything in one quick go, which we haven't got there in Windows Vista. Also, we've got some things like Aero Shake, I think was one of the other things. Let's have a look. In Windows 7, you've got thumbnail previews. And it's not doing it on my machine because I've not got the correct graphics driver, I think, up and running on this version of Hyper-V, but we got thumbnails of Internet and Explorer and File Explorer and that kind of thing. The other thing we got is things like you can drag windows around and get them to dock like that. That was something that was new so you can dock them like that. So that was something that was new in Windows 7. And I think you also had the shake. Let's check. Yeah, there you go. So you shake the window, and that's still there in Windows 10 as well. And it just leaves open the one that you're currently viewing. So there's a lot of little subtle changes with the user interface. If I go from File Explorer, and like I said, I haven't even got the full graphics driver on either virtual machine to show off the best of their capabilities, really. So here you can see the user interface in File Explorer was cleaned up as well. You've got your favorites there, which you can pin stuff to. It has much more of a look of Windows 10 than when you look at Windows 10 now. You can see how much this has that look of Windows 7 as opposed to Vista, which had its own style. Really, it wasn't XP, and it wasn't really Windows. It wasn't really Windows XP, it was its own kind of style. So they've improved those file views and the folders, and they've still got the active folders in terms of you would get the play options and things like that, but they're much simplified to how Vista had its folders. So again, it's just an example of sort of how Microsoft cleaned up the user interface on there. And you've got these new areas here, which I'm going to come back to on Home Group in a minute, but you had that, the computer and networks and all that kind of thing. So one interesting thing that was introduced with Windows 7 was Home Group. Home Group, the idea was they made it easier to share content between your computers at home. So if you got multiple machines at home and you want to share content between them. Actually, Windows Vista, it was a bit of a pain to set up drives and usernames and passwords and all that kind of thing. With Home Group, you created a home group which had a password like that. You gave that password to the other computer on your network, and then you could share content between them. You could share music, videos, pictures, that kind of thing. And it was actually a really nice, really simple way of doing home sharing that has gone now in Windows 10, and that's partly because Windows 10 is sort of Microsoft want you to use the cloud sharing, it's like OneDrive type things. But I actually did like Home Group. It was a nice feature and a good enhancement from Vista, and it was very much simpler to get machines to communicate with each other for sharing content, especially for home users. The other thing they did as well in this area as well, it was much easier to manage connected devices in here. As well, so like cameras and webcams and that kind of thing. And a big difference was the inclusion of IE8 over IE7, and as you can see, this renders the homepage of the default homepage, which is MSN UK in my region. You can see that it really does handle things a lot better. So a much better version of Internet Explorer. So it's good to see IE improving on there, and it is a big improvement over the one that was in. And it is a big improvement over the browser in Vista. So the media tool built into Windows Vista and Windows 7 was Windows Media Player. In Windows 7 it got bumped to version 12 and had a couple of new features. I haven't got media sharing set up on here on these VMs. But one option you did have was an option to do Play To. So Play To would show up on here. So rather than just playing the file, it would actually stream it to another device. And it could be another Windows Media Player PC, or another PC with Windows Media Player running on it. It could be a Sonos speaker or anything that supports UPnP or DLNA, Digital Living Network Alliances, and that allow you to remotely play music on devices. So you could have a media player, a physical media player connected to a speaker, and from Windows 7 you could right click and do Play To as well. So that was always a neat feature. And the Windows Media Player itself is a good tool for managing your libraries and that when we had local libraries. And in conjunction with Home Group as well, it meant that you could share media between devices. So you could stream in it, and you could connect up devices together, and they were backward compatible, so I think we could probably stream between these two devices because Vista did have streaming in there. But anyway, so Play 2 was a nice way of sharing video on that. And talking of media as well, it also had internet TV on here, so you could, I think even there was a Sky player that you could watch Sky TV on your PC running Windows Media Center. But it was essentially the same version of Windows Media Center that was installed on here that was on Windows Vista. Very fond of Windows Media Center. Some of the things that Microsoft claim on the press releases that I was just when I was reading, doing research for this, is that it was quicker to shut down and stop. Well, it's difficult to say on a virtual machine, but we'll if I restart that one, you'll see if it's any quicker. I'll flick over to my Windows Vista box and do the same thing, but yeah, it's hard to. In fact, and there you go. Look at that. This is getting a bit sluggish now. CPU is running at 100%, and I'm getting a bit unresponsive. So maybe we've seen some of these issues with Vista creeping back in. I think it might be the Windows indexing service, but yeah, there's something to Windows Media Player networking. So I'm going to have to restart this anyway because I've seen this crash the machine. Well, I managed to end task that now, so let's just reboot this and see how quickly this one restarts. It's definitely not as fast as Windows 7. Not too bad though. Right, let's go back to Windows 7. So you see control panel, not much difference in there. Just Windows 7 just cleaned up the UI slightly, but essentially it's the same control panel and the same driver model as well. So that's one reason why I think Windows 7 had a better reputation, because the devices were ready for Windows 7. The searching improved in Windows 7. It was an improvement over the over Windows Vista. And of course all the under the hood stuff as well, the security improved as well. We don't get to see as many of the user access control dialog boxes when you want to get to do something. They clean that up as well, so that's when you need admin rights potentially, but you still get them, but there's not as frequent in Windows 7 as they were in Vista. And I didn't find that annoying in Vista, but I think for Vista it was more of an issue with going from XP where there was nothing like that at all. So it's definitely not as bad in here. In terms of installed applications, there wasn't very much on here. You can see it's fairly clean, and if we look back on Vista, there's probably a few more things installed, but not a huge amount. You don't got Windows Movie Maker and stuff, but you could certainly you would get those through the Windows Live service and bring those in anyway. So probably less bloatware installed there, but not a huge amount of difference on there. I mean, going from memory, Windows 7 was just a lot better, more pleasing operating system to use for all the various reasons we talked about in this video. But as you can see, when you put them side by side, there's not a huge amount of difference. It's an evolution from Vista to 7. That kind of came to a bit of and so that just made 7 familiar for people to use, and it became the operating system that everybody wanted to use. Even when Windows 8 came out, as much as I like Windows 8, it was a bit of a shock to the system with the new UI changes, and that's why people like Windows 7. It was a familiarity. Perhaps in the next video I'll go to Windows 8 and we'll see what the jump in the user change and why that has such a bad reputation compared to 7. So you can see Microsoft have this TikTok of upgrades where good, bad, or whatever, and we'll have a look at that to see whether it's really justified. But as you see, Windows 7, it was a great operating system, and in some respects it still is. It's very nice and light, but the time has come to let that go. It's out of support now, but I don't think it was quite the leap that people think it was. Vista wasn't as bad as people thought it was, and there's various service packs over time improved its performance. So anyway, there you go. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll go look at Windows 8 on the next video.